Chapter 821, Obsession and Intoxicated Feelings. Leaving some witnesses behind was meaningless to Tang Xiu. He didn't have the slightest idea to find out about the Golden Shield Special Ability Bureau of the United States. He wasn't, and never would be, a politician. His motive was just pure business. He wanted to make money to buy cultivation resources for his family members to become immortal cultivators in earnest. Tang Guisheng respected and fully approved of Tang Xiu's judgment at this time. He shook his head to express his opinion that they didn't need to act like that and said directly, Xiu has his own plan. Since he doesn't want to leave anyone alive, we might as well annihilate them completely. Besides, I'm sure the US will stay low for a few years after the Golden Shield Special Ability Bureau suffers such a great loss. Having said that, their eyes shifted back to the virtual holographic screen to watch several American Golden Shield ability users unleash their abilities, in an attempt to escape from where the cargo ship just exploded. The beautiful woman was doing fine. She was a water elementalist and also seized the time to quickly grab a small boat while manipulating the water. Hence, she was able to drift over a kilometer away without serious injuries. Dorrit, however, didn't possess such a sharp sixth sense like the bell and reacted much slower. At this moment, his back was dyed red by his blood, with more seeping out from his lips. He desperately manipulated two flames and sprinted on the sea's surface. Bang, bang, bang. 6 explosion sounds came from behind them, causing the fleeing Dorrit and the bell to look behind. Their complexions dramatically changed as they saw 6 members of their Special Ability Bureau being bombarded with artillery shells that streaked out from the water. Their bodies were blown up and turned into a bloody mist as they floated several meters in the air. What the fuck is going on, and what are those shits? Torn apart inside, Dorrit felt like he was about to explode with fury. Unfortunately, no one could explain, not even the slightly injured Belle. Sanger Haben, a 48-year-old water elementalist and a member of the Golden Shield Special Ability Bureau. She was one of the 5 strongest ability users in the entire Golden Shield Special Ability Bureau, and was also Dorrit's best general in battle. At this time, her ability was just slightly affected even though she was lightly injured in the cargo ship's explosion. She was practically like a fish in the water after submerging under the sea, manipulating the current of the water around her to constantly accelerate herself. Not even a supercar at max speed was faster than her speed in the water. The sea is my world. I can still survive after staying in the sea for a few months. No matter what kind of weapons the enemy uses, nothing can threaten me as long as I'm in the sea, imagined Sanger Haben. Suddenly, a dreadful aura came, followed by buzzing sounds that traveled fast in the water. 2 seconds after it caught up with her, she felt a tremendous force on her back. Her body burst apart and dyed the seawater red. On the sea. The pretty woman rowed the small boat and quickly appeared next to Dorrit. Looking at the man's miserable condition as he coughed up blood, she quickly shouted, "Come aboard. I'm faster than you at sea. I'll take you and escape." The furious flame of anger in Dorrit's chest subsided considerably. He sprinted and jumped onto the small boat and straightly dispersed the flame he manipulated. After looking at the pretty woman whose injuries were light, he then ferociously looked back. Boom. Boom. He clearly saw that the last 2 members of the Golden Shield Special Ability Bureau were hit by artillery shells that flew out from the sea. Although the shells didn't reduce them to ashes, it still directly blasted their bodies and killed him. Fucking bastards. Even with torpedoes or naval mines, it's impossible to have such huge power, speed, and precision. What fucking weapon is that? Who the hell is attacking us? Dorrit was truly maddened and tormented by the artillery shells that swiftly came out of nowhere like devils. He was forced to see one of his trained men blown up, causing his heart to ache. "I'm sure it's some devilish shit used by those Chinese," said the bell in a cold voice. "There's no one else in this area but those 2 Chinese liners." "Dorrit, we were likely ambushed by the Chinese." I can tell that there are Chinese submarines in the water. China. Dorrit yelled furiously. I already guessed it should be those damned Chinese. But this bunch of assholes was nearly destroyed by the hands of those French Special Ability Bureau elementalists. How the fuck do they dare to shoot us? We were still so fucking far away from them, so how the hell did those fuckers find us? Our eyes have undergone surgery that has greatly improved our eyesight. Do you think that no one among those Chinese also had undergone a similar surgery? On top of that, I don't think those two liners are just ordinary liners. They must have been modified and had a military surveillance system installed. It's easy to spot us with that kind of instrument. Just pipe down, will you? Things have already reached this point and it's useless to get angry over it now. What's more important now is to escape far away from here. Dorrit took a deep breath to suppress his anger, then said with a grim face, as long as I don't die today, I'll definitely make those Chinese fuckers pay a terrible price in the future. I'll massacre their cities, at the very least, I will slaughter a small town to vent my hatred. You're right. Only by slaughtering the Chinese citizens can we wash away our shame today, only by using their blood, replied the pretty woman. Suddenly, the pretty woman shuddered. Two water columns appeared from both sides of the small boat in almost an instant, wrapping her body in a flash to forcefully move her dozens of meters away. Boom. The small boat was hit by an artillery shell. Dorrit, who was unable to detect it ahead of time, was instantly hit and he fainted in the flame of the explosion. His body was still intact, but his internal organs were shattered by the impact of the explosion. Unless there was a magical pill refined by a perfected golden immortal, nothing could take him away from death. Dorrit. The belle was full of sorrow. She didn't have much of a sense of belonging to the Golden Shield's Special Ability Bureau, but Dorrit was different. He was the reason why she enlisted to join the Bureau. It was not like a sentiment between a couple, rather it was comradeship from when they had gone through a lot together. At this time, she was completely infuriated. Dorrit, one of a handful of friends she trusted the most, was killed like this. Damn Chinese people. I'll make you pay with your blood sooner or later. The pretty woman furiously roared as she manipulated the water dragon to wrap her body. It took her away with speed faster than before. Shoo. Shoo. Two half-a-meter-long artillery shells completely locked onto the pretty woman midair. She cursed for a few seconds before the two shells bombarded her. Inside the subaquatic corvette, Tang Shou calmly watched the pretty woman being killed by the two shells. The coldness in his eyes gradually subsided as he turned to look at Tang Guisheng and said, Grandpa, I still need to stay at sea for 2 days. You must have alarmed a lot of people since you took a lot of our family's manpower to come here without telling anyone why. Also, we have killed the French and American ability users, so I'm sure the news of their death will reach the people of these two countries. You must take back our family's men and leave here as quick as possible to return to our country. Tang Guisheng asked, the fact that we killed these two countries' ability users, should we disclose it, say, to those above? No. It's best not to tell them directly. Tang Shou shook his head and said, Duan Mulin should be their spokesman. Just inform Duan Mulin directly. I believe he will not only solve the following problems but will also erase all traces. He may even become very excited since, well, it's a kind of a present we are giving to him. Tang Guisheng's eyes lit up and he nodded with satisfaction. You're right. Let's do it this way, then. Also, pay attention to your safety after we leave, got it? You must stay alive no matter what. Don't worry, Grandpa. Tang Shou nodded. I would never make any stupid mistakes. After a long while, Tang Shou sent Tang Guisheng and Tang Min back to the liner. He then watched the two ships disappear into the distance and over the horizon. Then he turned to look at Gu Xiaoxue and said, You know, I used to feel a sliver of a sense of belonging to a family in the past, and the one who gave me that feeling is only your master. But now that I have more family members, it turns out that such a feeling is really great. An envious look flashed in Gu Xiaoxue's eyes. She was an orphan. She didn't know who her parents were, not even if they were dead or alive. However, she couldn't care less about that, for who she cared about was her master, Gu Yan. Family to her was limited to her master and the core members of the everlasting feast hall. The feeling of kinship? A sense of belonging to a family? Suddenly, Gu Xiaoxue's expression slightly changed and she asked, Grand Master, do you only regard master as a family member? Being a master for a day is a father for life, answered Tang Xiu with a smile. If she's not my family member, then who is? Suddenly, Gu Xiaoxue's heart ached as the complex emotions inside her were in a frenzy. She didn't know if it was because she felt sorry for her master or if it was because of other reasons. In the next 2 days, Tang Xiu took Cheng Xueme and Gu Xiaoxue back to the previous barren island that they visited and he continued to train Cheng Xueme. After a few days of training, Cheng Xueme was finally able to control her own power, and she even learned an immortal cultivation technique from Tang Xiu. Having tasted what cultivation, she was so fascinated that she even found herself addicted to it. Unfortunately, Tang Xiu didn't have much time to delay and told her that the training time for her was up, much to her chagrin. Then what I should do next? Asked Cheng Xueme, looking a bit worried. I know what you're worried about. You're still on a mission, after all, and the people in Japan probably think that you've died inside the vestige. So you'll be questioned if you go back, said Tang Xiu. But you can rest assured about that. I'll help you figure out a way to deal with it properly. You mean I can still return to Japan and continue my mission? Asked Cheng Xueme, surprised. Of course, you can, answered Tang Xiu with a smile. I've told Kawako to arrange things to cover you up. She'll even help you in the future, so you naturally won't have to ditch your mission like that. Chapter 822, Being Conscious of What's Right and What Principles to Follow. After explaining the plan, Tang Xiu used the subaquatic corvette to send Cheng Xueme back to Kawako Yamamoto in Japan. Kawako also sent her people to catch up with her, so that everything proceeded smoothly. Tang Xiu also gave one of the tech products to Cheng Xueme so she could deal with some people in Japan. Without a doubt, that tech product was nothing but trash, a type of auxiliary product that was consumer goods. When they separated, Tang Xiu only said a few words to Cheng Xueme, but he believed that she would understand the meaning. Cheng Xueme, you're one of Tang Xiu's people from now on. You'll still be one of my people even after you become a ghost. Only I can make you go further down the path you've chosen to walk on for thousands of years in the future. Early in the morning. The first ray of sunshine rose from the east as the subaquatic corvette anchored near the port of Jingmen Island. Following the discussion with Tang Guisheng previously, the space around the small port had been removed of people and ships, and the area had now been taken over by the everlasting feast hall. On the shoreside near the port, Duanmu Lin and Tang Guisheng stood side by side while several members of the China Special Ability Bureau waited with expectation. Are you sure Tang Xiu told you today, old Tang? Duanmu was also full of similar expectations. Tang Guisheng informed him that Tang Xiu obtained a type of submarine, a subaquatic corvette from 3-star vestige. The news practically gave him insomnia. Another thing he learned was that Tang Xiu used that submarine to kill tens of ability users from the USA Special Ability Bureau. Even their number one figure, Dorit, was murdered. Thus, he was even more eager to see the submarine. Tang Guisheng smiled at his words and said, When have I ever lied to you? Xiu asked me to inform you. If you don't believe me, let's stop waiting here, then. Duanmu Lin immediately let out an apologetic smile and smiled. Don't. I may not believe anyone else, but you, old Tang, are someone I believe 100%, no, 10,000%. Let alone waiting for a day, I'll keep waiting for more than a year. Tang Guisheng looked pleased and smilingly said, No worries, then. Xiu always keeps his word. I can't say precisely, but he should appear in front of us in a while. His voice was abruptly stopped as Tang Guisheng saw the subaquatic corvette emerge and float on the surface ahead. Excitement covered his old face as he raised his hand to point to it and shouted, "Speak of the devil. That's the submarine I told you about. Xiao and the others have come back." Duanmu looked around and watched the cabin hatch of the subaquatic corvette open as Tang Xiao and Gu Xiaoxue came out from inside. He suddenly paced forward and loudly greeted Tang Xiao, "Welcome back, Tang Xiao." Tang Xiao and Gu Xiaoxue walked on the surface of the sea and headed straight to the front of Duanmu Lin and Tang Guisheng. Then he smilingly said, "Well, the feeling of coming back alive is really great, I can taste it, Senior Duanmu. Also, I haven't let you down either. I can be said to have made great merit and contributions, and I even brought you back a large number of treasures. It's a pity that I wasn't able to bring back anything else when I came out though. If I had, it would have really benefited our country." Duanmu Lin grabbed Tang Xiao's hand amiably and said, "It's enough. This is enough. I learned the specific details of what this subaquatic corvette can do from your grandfather. It's something that I've never dreamed about. It's just a submarine, yet it can completely annihilate tens of ability users from the US Special Ability Bureau, and even accomplished the most important issue, eliminating Dorit. This subaquatic corvette is definitely the epitome of a seabed terror killer." Tang Xiao chuckled and said, "Well, I don't know if it's some terrifying killer or not. I just know that its weapon configuration is really great, well equipped and fast. By the way, it also has an excellent interior too. The extraterrestrial race who left behind these remains really understood how to enjoy life." "Can you take me to see the submarine?" asked Duanmu with a smile. "Senior Duanmu, I obtained this subaquatic corvette from the 3-star vestige, but I can't be said to own it as my personal property. You represent the government who I want to give this submarine to, so the subaquatic corvette will be handed over to you. You truly know what's right and what principle to follow, Tang Xiao. A role model for the young generation," praised Duanmu Lin with satisfaction. "I accept this subaquatic corvette on behalf of our country, and I believe the reward from the state will be handed over to you soon." "Well, this port is kind of a good place," said Tang Xiao out of the blue, a smile on the corners of his mouth. "The members of our Special Ability Bureau will withdraw immediately, and this area will be handed over to your everlasting feast hall," said Duanmu Lin without hesitation. "Also, you can expect the government's approval documents to be sent to you soon. This place will become your everlasting feast hall's private port." "Then I'd like to thank you for that, Senior Duanmu," said Tang Xiao with a smile. "I'll also tell Kong Xia to send 100 rooms of God's nectar to the headquarters of the Special Ability Bureau, both as a token of goodwill and my thanks." "Good. Good, good." The wrinkles on Duanmu Lin's face stretched out and his smile was sincerely coming from his heart. Tang Xiao then looked at Tang Guisheng and inquired, "What are you going to do after this, Grandpa? Do you want to go with me to the everlasting feast hall, or are you leaving Jingmen Island with Senior Duanmu?" Tang Guisheng keenly sensed the faint peculiar light in Duanmu Lin's eyes and immediately replied, "Nah, I don't want to get into the mess that young people like you guys get in. I'm going back to the capital when Brother Duanmu is done here. Well, it's been hectic for me recently, so I'll stay in Jingmen Island and have a good rest." Tang Min, who was behind her father, suddenly interjected and smilingly said, "Your paternal aunt wants to stay here. Are you not going to entertain me, Xiao?" "I naturally must entertain you with the best hospitality since you're willing to stay, Auntie," replied Tang Xiao with a smile. "In that case, we'll take our leave, Senior Duanmu. Please feel free to contact me whenever you need my assistance." A disappointed look flashed in Duanmu Lin's eyes, but he still nodded with a smile. He thought that Tang Guisheng would choose to go with Tang Xiao. That way, he could have an excuse to visit the everlasting feast hall as well. He couldn't figure out the actual situation of the everlasting feast hall the last time he visited the premises. But if he went with Tang Guisheng, he might have an unexpected discovery of what he wanted to find out. It's really a pity, Duan Mulin felt somewhat helpless inside. Immediately after, 4 cars left the port, and Tang Xiu brought Tang Min to the Everlasting Feast Hall. The latter received the best hospitality there, and even Gu Yan came out of the exquisite pagoda after she got the news. Tang Min was very curious about her, so she grabbed her to have a chat for a long time. She even learned a lot of things from her that gave her a huge shock. As the day faded away and night came, and as Tang Xiu had dinner with Tang Min, Gu Xiaoxue came to the private room. She looked at Tang Xiu and said, "Grand Master, Banzhou came and he learned that you're here, so he wants to see you." "Banzhou is currently in the Everlasting Feast Hall?" asked Tang Xiu, surprised. "He just escorted 10 street children from the northwestern region yesterday. Except for 2 children, 8 of them have an excellent aptitude and personality. He originally planned to leave tonight, but after learning that you're here, he wants to see you. He said that he needs to report his work," said Gu Xiaoxue. "How many children have been adopted by our Everlasting Feast Hall now, exactly?" "What's the specific number?" asked Tang Xiu. "Combined with the last 8 children, a total of 62,200, answered Gu Xiaoxue. "That many?" Tang Xiu was shocked. How can it dramatically increase like that all of a sudden? The northwestern region has been struck with droughts that makes life in some impoverished areas very difficult, explained Gu Xiaoxue with a forced smile. Thus, the situation has led to cases where the inhabitants began to sell their children and women. The government has been working hard to solve the problems there, but there are too many people in need of help. Life has been difficult for a lot of the street children and orphans. So much so that a dozen or so orphanages have been sending out children to Banzhou to take care of after exploiting some special means. Why would the orphanages want the children out? Tang Xia was puzzled. "Those 10 or so orphanages are going to close soon," replied Gu Xiaoxue. "If we don't take the children, I'm afraid these kids will become homeless sooner or later. Also, those orphanages are actually private orphanages that rely on public donations. There have been only a few kind-hearted people who are willing to adopt the children there." Tang Xiu caught the gist in a flash as he nodded and said, "What about the traces to us? Have you cleared them up?" "When Banzhou's team reported this to me, I realized some people with ambitions would find out about this large-scale adoption of orphans, so I sent a group of our Everlasting Feast Hall's elites to clean up all the traces. Nobody will find out about any leads even if they want to investigate it," said Gu Xiaoxue. "All right, then." Tang Xiu took a deep breath and looked at her. "Bring Banzhou here." "All right." As Gu Xiaoxue left the room, Tang Min asked with a surprised look, "What are you going to do after adopting so many homeless children?" "I'm going to train and cultivate them to build an army of cultivators," answered Tang Xiu. "Forming an army of cultivators?" Tang Min was struck dumb with wonder. "What exactly do you want to do? Could it be that your real intention is to rule the world? Auntie, do you really think the objective of your nephew is just to that point? Only to rule this world?" Tang Xiu shook his head and laughed. "When my strength has reached a certain level, even a sneeze of mine would be enough to make the whole earth explode. Didn't you just hear the existence of the immortal world from Yen? I brought up these children to cultivate them so that they will be able to follow me. I hope for them to become good helpers for me to move unhindered in the immortal world later." Tang Min was silent for a few minutes before asking with a bit of anticipation on her face, "Do you think your auntie has any hope of going to the immortal world, Xiu?" "It won't be a problem in the future if you're interested," answered Tang Xiu with a smile. "At the worst, I'll just have to trick the heavenly Tao rules in this world. By then, the entire Tang family can follow me into the immortal world." "Awesome." Tang Min fiercely clapped and called out excitedly. "But auntie, it's best not to tell even grandpa about what you've known for the time being," said Tang Xiu with a smile. "After all, these issues are no trivial matter. Once they are leaked, I'm afraid that it will bring unnecessary troubles to our family." And I already have arrangements set up for the Tang family in the future. Good. 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 I'll keep it in mind, replied Tang Min quickly. Quickly, Banzhou came in a hurry to the private room and excitedly shouted when he saw Tang Xiu, "Boss! I can meet you at last. I went to Shanghai a couple of days ago, but found out that you weren't there." Tang Xiu smiled and waved at him, gesturing Banzhou to take a seat and then smilingly said, "You've been working hard these days. I'll give you a target to reach now. You will stop adopting children when the number has reached 80,000. I will have other arrangements for you and Dingji by then." Chapter 823, The Groundwork for the Future. Tang Xiu spent some time chatting with Banzhou. He could see that the fellow had become more mature and dependable in the past year. He complimented and encouraged the guy sincerely before sending him off. "Would you like to visit Clam Island too, Grandmaster?" Gu Xiaoxue asked while standing beside Tang Xiu. The intoxicating smile on her beautiful face was enough to topple a city. Tang Xiu thought for a while before he nodded and replied, "Since I came to Jingmen Island and the Clam Island is pretty close to here, let's go there, then. Would you like to go with me, Auntie?" Tang Min was interested in seeing the results of Tang Xiu's endeavors in forming an army of cultivators, so she replied without hesitation, "I'm going with you." Early in the next morning, a liner was moored at the newly built port on Clam Island. Tang Xiu, Tang Min, and Gu Xiaoxue just stepped out of the cabin and saw more than 10 strong, burly men standing guard at the port. One of the men came striding in, but his face slightly changed when he saw Tang Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue. His expression turned wild as he swiftly greeted courteously, "Boss." Tang Xiu nodded with a smile and asked, "Who's in charge of Clam Island now?" "It's Yuan Yi, boss," answered the man. "How's it going with the Clam Island construction project?" Tang Xiu nodded and asked again, also, "Where are the children being settled down?" "The project is still progressing, but it's difficult to see the results as of yet," answered the man. "As for the children, all of them are being settled in the southern peninsula. It's a restricted area that even we have no rights to enter." "All right, tend to your duties. I'll go to the southern peninsula to have a look myself," said Tang Xiu. "Affirmative." The man nodded reverently and quietly retreated to the side. While leading Tang Min, Tang Xiu didn't fly to the destination due to the Clam Island being under construction. They slowly approached the southern peninsula along the coastline of Clam Island. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 ghostly silhouettes silently dashed out of the dense thicket as 2 strong men appeared in front of Tang Xiu, while releasing obvious killing intent. "Presumptuous," scolded Gu Xiaoxue as she stepped forward. As the 2 sturdy men saw that it was Tang Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue, their killing intent instantly disappeared and they became a bit flustered. They hurried to salute respectfully. "No need to blame them, it's the responsibility of their job," Tang Xiu waved and said with a pale smile, "Notify Yuan Yi. Tell him to assemble all the children immediately. I need to have a look at them." "Yes, sir." One of them replied and vanished instantly, while another man led Tang Xiu and the rest to enter the forested hill quickly. They promptly approached a 2+ meters tall wall which they jumped over to enter a spacious area. A lot of 1-meter-high blocks of bluestones were densely laid out on the flat ground, so many that they couldn't be counted. A few minutes later, Yuan Yi sprinted in at his top speed while wearing a black wushu suit and tied up long hair. He then came to the front of Tang Xiu's group and reverently greeted, "Boss. You're Yuan Yi?" Tang Xiu nodded and smiled, "How's your cultivation, and what's the stage that you've reached?" "I'm at the mid-stage of foundation establishment," answered Yuan Yi. "Not bad." Tang Xiu nodded and said, "But you need to persevere. Your rank in our everlasting feast hall should be not low since you can be assigned here. According to the reward rules, the first 10 members who break through the golden core stage will be generously rewarded. Keep working hard and strive well to get into the top 10. A gleam flashed in Yuan Yi's eyes, and he replied firmly, "This subordinate will strive to do his best." Tang Xiu produced a spirit-amassing pill and smiled lightly. "Don't tell the others that I give you special attention and just do your best. Whether you can be one of the best men to stand around me or will be stepped on by someone else, it will all depend on your own efforts." "Thank you, boss. I will." Yuan Yi was a bit excited. It must be noted that the medicinal pill produced by the Everlasting Feast Hall was a very important resource for cultivation. Additionally, it was quite difficult to obtain even one of them. 10 minutes later, Tang Xiu finally learned the reason why there were a lot of bluestones in this wide area. Shadowy figures came from the low-rise buildings in the area to the north. It was a long line of skinny children marshaled by dozens of strong men who swiftly ran between the orderly arranged bluestones. They seemed to know which block of bluestone was supposed to be their position, judging from them climbing on their respective bluestone one by one. Using his spiritual sense to sweep over them, Tang Xiu was both amazed and surprised that there were 62,200 blocks of bluestone, each with a child standing on top. How interesting! From his survey using his spiritual sense, Tang Xiu found dozens of children less than 3 years old under the escort of the stocky men who then placed them on the bluestone. Yuan Yi then reported respectfully, "All the children have arrived, boss." Tang Xiu nodded and his feet began to float. The 62,200 children watched him walking in the air as if it was like a staircase. He floated higher in the air with each step before eventually arriving in the north in front of the first row of bluestones. While standing over 10 meters in the air, Tang Xiu looked around before nodding with satisfaction and began to speak in a deep voice. "Some of you already know who I am, some of you don't. But now, I'll introduce myself to all of you. I want you all to remember me and keep me in your heart. I'm Tang Xiu. I am the one who provides your food and clothing, and the boss who provides you all your necessities and your education. From this day onwards, you only have to call me boss. From today on, you will remember my name, memorize my identity, and keep it in your heart that the most important thing in your life is I, Tang Xiu, for whom you swear fealty and loyalty to in your lifetime." During his speech, Tang Xiu secretly released his imposing aura. The oppressing aura was extremely light, yet it still caused the 62,200 children's faces to change. They were unaware that Tang Xiu had used some special means to imprint his image deep into their hearts. Soul imprint technique. It was commonly used in the immortal world, a useful method to subdue one's subordinates and those who came under their service. Half a minute later, Tang Xiu retracted his imposing aura and said with satisfaction, "Yuan Yi, take them back. All of them will be in your care in the future regarding their life, education, and cultivation. All of them must follow a program and curriculum of a modern military school and academy. If you don't understand the management model in the military school, I'll summon Wolfhead from Nine Dragons Island to help you here." Yuan Yi floated to approach and respectfully replied, "I know the army training programs of various countries in the world, but I don't understand the administrative and management model for the military school. I'll notify Wolfhead to come over and help you," said Tang Xiu. Yuan Yi complied and began issuing orders as the 62,200 children were brought back in groups, under the leadership of dozens of stocky men. Tang Min looked at Tang Xiu who was standing up in the air, eyes full of brilliant light. Everyone had a fantasy of having a pair of wings that enabled them to fly freely in the sky like birds. Though Tang Min had currently become someone with a high stature, she had such a fantasy countless of times in the past. "I must start cultivating. I must become a powerful cultivator." The recent experiences and knowledge that Tang Min had encountered lately had constantly changed her state of mind. She watched Tang Xiu's figure in the sky while clenching her fists, and she secretly made up her mind. Tang Xiu stayed on the island for the next 2 days. He communicated with the children to understand and solve their problems while combining grace and might to deepen their impression towards him. At the same time, he also saw the 5 little fellows again, Tang Jin, Tang Mu, Tang Shui, Tang Hua, and Tang Mu. To his surprise, these 5 little fellows were now able to sense qi and were even able to control the flow of qi within their bodies. They could be said to have become young experts at the first or second layer of qi refining. Go on. Are there any unsolved problems that came up while training these children here? Tang Xiu looked at Cheng Yi and smilingly asked before he left. We have a total of 3 of them, boss, answered Cheng Yi. First, the identity of these children is highly confidential, so ordinary people can't contact them. This is especially a problem for the youngest among them. Dozens of them are still in need of milk. There are tens of us here, but well, being a father or a mother for them is kinda a real headache. Tang Xiu pondered for a while before he slowly nodded and said, for the toddlers, you can send them to some nearby places temporarily and hire some qualified and good-natured babysitters to bring them up. Cheng Yi nodded and then continued, the second is our logistics supply. It's seriously lacking. We can hardly keep up with just food and water alone. We have more than 60,000 children here, which leads to food problems since the consumption rate is too high, even if we send more food. This issue is easy to handle, said Tang Xiu. Xiao Xue, assign some people when you go back and build a logistics supply fleet to transport necessary supplies here. Understood, Gu Xiaoxue nodded. Cheng Yi continued, one last thing, we only have dozens of teachers and instructors here, boss. It's challenging to train our children comprehensively in accordance with the military management model with so few teachers. Could you assign some more people here? Tang Xiu shook his head and replied, I don't have a problem with sending more people here. But the most important issue now is that there are too few core members in our everlasting feast hall. Our most secretive plans will face the danger of being exposed and leaked out once we send outsiders here. What should we do here then? Chang Yi stalled. Tang Xiu raised his hand and said, for the workers you need, how many people do you think should we send to manage things here? 200 people, said Cheng Yi immediately. At least 200 people should be sent to solve our problem with the scarcity of teachers and instructors here. 200 people? That figure is out of the question. Tang Xiu shook his head and said, give me some time. I'll send over 100 people in 2 months. However, I'll need you to assign some people to train those 100 people for 3 months. You mean, they are not our everlasting feast hall's people? Asked Cheng Yi hurriedly. Not yet, at least not now, said Tang Xiu faintly. But they will be soon. The 62,200 former orphans here would be Tang Xiu's most loyal subordinates in the future, the very groundwork and foundation of his return to the immortal world. Thus, the absolute loyalty of the instructors and teachers who trained these children was necessary. The plan he had been brewing and thinking about recently seemed like it was about to start now. Chapter 824, Gentlemanly Manner. There were 2 plans that Tang Xiu intended to execute in the near future. The first one was to go to Kaunas, to Longquan Bay to try to open the mysterious immortal abode. The second was to go to Israel to spend quite a fortune on buying manpower. From the looks of the current situation, however, going to Israel was more urgent than visiting Longquan Bay in Kaunas. 2 days later, Tang Xiu came to Hong Kong alone. After getting off the plane, he took a cab empty-handed. He had originally planned to go straight to his residence in Hong Kong, but changed his destination after some thinking. Instead, he headed to the Grand Fortune Jewelry Group. He had never been there before, even though he was the big boss of the company. He had a lot of jades inside his interspatial ring, most of them being high quality. Once these jades were processed, engraved, and made into a large number of products, he could make a fortune when they sold. If he could also use the connections of Grand Fortune Jewelry, he could earn more money and even buy more raw jades. Central Hong Kong was located on the north shore of Hong Kong Island and acted as the central business district for commerce, finance, and banking. It was also the authority center of the government, making it the special administrative region. The price of the land there was sky high, even an inch of land might cost you gold. It could be said to be the most prosperous place in Hong Kong. The Grand Fortune Jewelry Company owned a 33-story high-rise building that covered a large area. The 1st through 13th floor were commercial areas with various stores, including luxury brands, restaurants, entertainment establishments, integral whole supermarkets, and other high-end consumer stores. The 14th through 33rd floors were used as the core areas of the Grand Fortune Jewelry Company. Tang Xiu took the cab to the south gate of the building and paid the fare. He then strolled into the courtyard and entered the premises. After checking the signs inside, he took the elevator straight to the 14th floor. Welcome. For welcoming ladies with excellent curves who wore cheongsams bowed in ceremony while wearing refreshing smiles on their beautiful faces. Tang Xiu slightly nodded at their greetings and headed to the door in front. He then found that the high-end jewelry stores inside had unpleasant staff members, though the number of guests was quite high. He even saw a tour group under the guidance of a tour guide watching the gold and silver jewelry inside, as well as the jades, emeralds, jadeites. Hello, sir. How may I be of service? A female clerk in a black suit came up and asked. I'm just strolling around. Tang Xiu shook his head and said, please go back to your work, don't mind me. A disappointed look flashed in the female clerk's eyes. Tang Xiu's appearance was very handsome, just looking at him made her heart race. There was even more disappointment as Tang Xiu was also wearing famous brands. She thought that he was some kind of second-generation nouveau riche, maybe even third generation. Can't get him as a boyfriend, the salesgirl muttered inwardly and reluctantly left full of disappointment. Unaware of the salesgirl's thought, Tang Xiu strolled around the store in a relaxed and leisurely mood. The items sold here were so common in his eyes, after all, the most expensive one was just hundreds of thousands of yuan. 15th floor. After arriving here, Tang Xiu found the items were priced higher. He even saw several platinum diamond rings priced at more than $1 million. Then he came to the 16th and 17th floors and looked at the items there. The price was much higher, especially on the 17th floor, which only had a few items. Though there were little more than a dozen, they were priced at more than 10 million. Hello, sir. The 18th floor is an area restricted to the VIPs of our Grand Fortune Jewelry. Are you one of our company's VIPs? Two burly men in a black suit stopped Tang Xiu at the elevator door, while the beautiful woman at the counter asked politely. No, Tang Xiu shook his head. Are you perhaps a staff member of our Grand Fortune Jewelry? Asked the beauty once more. Tang Xiu thought for a moment and said, I think so. The beauty slightly smiled and said, if you're a staff member of our Grand Fortune Jewelry, you just need to swipe your work card upstairs. But I don't have one. Tang Xiu shook his head with a wry smile. The belle looked empty and immediately replied with a smile, you're joking, aren't you, sir? Every employee of our Grand Fortune Jewelry has a work card. You can't get to the top floor without it. Tang Xiu was silent for a moment and then curiously asked, is the price of the jewelry on the 18th floor more expensive? They are indeed more expensive, answered the beauty. A disdainful look flashed in her eyes during her speech. Even though she concealed it well, Tang Xiu's sharp eyes could still catch it. However, he was too lazy to care about this beauty's thoughts. He took out his mobile phone and dialed Hao Lei's cell phone number. I can't get through? Tang Xiu was stunned. He immediately released his spiritual sense and found Hao Lei in the jade processing workshop on the 26th floor. Half a second later. At the moment, she was focusing on carving a fist-sized jade while her cell phone and two palm-sized notebook were placed on the table. Can you please inform the person in charge here, Hao Lei, to come down, asked Tang Xiu to the beauty. Also, she should be on the 26th floor right now. The belle stared at Tang Xiu with an odd expression. The smile on her face receded greatly as she replied, have you made an appointment with our general manager in advance, sir? No, I just arrived in Hong Kong and she didn't know that I was coming, Tang Xiu shook his head. The pretty staff member was silent for a moment before she replied with an apologetic look, "I'm sorry, sir. You haven't made an appointment with our general manager, so I have no right to contact her. If you'd like to buy jewelry from our store, we have many good things that are highly valued in our store on this 17th floor as well." Tang Xiu wryly smiled at her response and walked to the side to sit on the chair there and then said, "Forget it. I'll personally let her know. Just tend to your work and don't mind me." The pretty staff member creased her brows and looked at Tang Xiu for a long time before shaking her head. She could recognize most of the scions of respectable families in Hong Kong, so she was sure that she had never seen Tang Xiu. Moreover, hearing that he had just arrived in Hong Kong, he shouldn't be a native here. There must be a problem with him. What he said before and now are kind of contradictory. The beauty turned her head to look at the two big men in black suits and gave a signal to them the moment Tang Xiu didn't notice her. Immediately, one of the big men strode to the front of Tang Xiu and made an ill-spoken remark, "Sir, you said you have the means to contact our general manager, so we'll give you 10 minutes. If there's no news after 10 minutes, please leave this place." Tang Xiu lightly glanced at the big man in front of him and then decided to put good use of a certain technique to condense his voice, to transmit his voice to Hao Lei on the 26th floor. "It's me. Come to the elevator on the 17th floor. On the 26th floor." Hao Lei was sitting in front of the workbench and was concentrating on the jade in her hand. Although she was the GM of Grand Fortune Jewelry, she was very interested in carving jade and usually came here for carving and sculpting whenever she had some free time. "Who?" She looked up and glanced around, but found that there were only some staff members busy with their work. None of them looked at nor spoke to her. "That voice feels kind of familiar." Hao Lei was sure that it was not some auditory hallucination she heard, but she also couldn't remember whose voice it was. "I'm Tang Xiu." Just as she was confused, the voice rang again in her ears. In that instant, Hao Lei abruptly jumped up from the chair and her eyes lit up. She put down the jade and carving chisel almost without hesitation, then took off her overalls as fast as possible and proceeded to head out to the elevator at a jog. She finally understood why she felt that the voice was somewhat familiar. It was the big boss's voice. That made her aware of one more thing: her big boss had the ability of long-distance voice transmission. At the entrance of the 17th floor elevator, a young man wore a smiling face as he followed a hot and voluptuous beautiful girl. When they arrived on the floor, the young man promptly handed out a VIP card and said, "We want to go to the 18th floor for shopping." The female staff behind the counter had an envious look flash in her eyes before she received the VIP card, and walked out from behind the counter and said, "Please wait for a minute, respected customers. The elevator will arrive soon." The young man ignored the pretty staff member and just looked at the girl beside him and fawningly said, "I pestered my mom for full 2 days before I got this VIP card, little Hui. You can pick whatever good things you see and like on the 18th floor of this Grand Fortune Jewelry." The girl called Yang Hui was the only daughter of a certain powerful and wealthy man in Hong Kong. She was a goddess in the mind of that young man. Being born with a golden spoon in her mouth, she was spoiled since birth, with a mind that always looked towards above. Even though that young man's background was not worse than hers, she only had a sliver of interest towards him. "You said it, Qi Changxing. I've been wanting to buy that love heart crystal, but it's too expensive, so I keep hesitating. Now that you want to give it to me, don't go back on your word." "Don't worry. I'll take out all of my savings to buy that love heart crystal for you as long as you like it, little Hui." Qi Changxing nodded without hesitation. Yang Hui curled her lips but was a bit disappointed inwardly. She didn't know how much savings this guy had, but she knew well how much that love heart crystal cost. As they waited for the elevator, Yang Hui turned around and saw Tang Xiu, who was sitting on the chair. She thought for a moment and then called out, "Hello, can you give me your chair?" Tang Xiu looked and sized up Yang Hui, then lowered his head again. When Qi Changxin saw Tang Xiu, he didn't see Tang Shou's face clearly, so he didn't recognize the devil who had once made his Qi family lose 2 billion yuan. He wanted to show his manliness before his goddess and immediately came forward to kick Tang Shou's calf and said, "Hey, dude. Shouldn't you at least act gentlemanly in front of a lady? Is it that troublesome for you to give up the chair?" Tang Shou looked up and apathetically replied, "Then what if I don't want to be a gentleman, huh?" Chapter 825, Reckless Use of Excellent Resource. Tang Shou disliked Yang Hui's attitude and was even disgusted with the way Qi Chongqing pursued girls, especially due to him pursuing such an impolite girl. Still, he lamented that the world was indeed so small. To think that he would bump into his old acquaintance Qi Chongqing right as he came to visit Hong Kong again. "You." Just as Qi Chongqing spoke, he clearly saw Tang Shou's face. The words he was about to say were swallowed in a flash while even his legs shivered. This fiend, the evil star. Regrets and remorse filled Qi Chongqing's whole being. He never once dreamed that the man would be his evil star, Tang Shou. What frightened him the most was that he just gently kicked this very fiend. "What's wrong with me? You don't like my answer?" asked Tang Shou coldly, "or do you think your kick at me was too light or something?" Qi Chongqing instantly shivered inside. If it wasn't for him being in front of his goddess, he could have knelt and pleaded for Tang Shou's forgiveness. He squeezed out a difficult smile to make a respectful face, then bowed and said, "This Chongqing dares not harbor such dislike towards you, Mr. Tang. I wouldn't have dared kick you if I was able to recognize you just now, not even if I were to be bestowed 10,000x more courage. Please don't stoop to my level of ignorance." Sigh. How come you always have such a short memory? Tang Shou shook his head and sighed, "Was the lesson before too light?" "I've never done anything outrageous ever since you previously left Hong Kong, Mr. Tang," replied Qi Chongqing bitterly. "It's just that I like little Hui, so I just wanted to show her, well, a good impression." Tang Shou actually knew about his idea, but it didn't mean that he approved his means of picking up girls, so he lightly said, "You don't need to rely on material means, nor money, to pursue girls. What you need is love, to be each other's sunshine. Only a couple who loves each other can stand the test of time and spend their lives together. You better try your best this way." Having said that, Tang Shou no longer wanted to get in contact with Qi Chongqing again, so he just shut his eyes and waited for Hao Lei to arrive. Yang Hui observed Tang Shou with a weird yet curious expression and occasionally gazed at Qi Chongqing, who looked scared yet respectful. She suddenly became curious about this handsome young man whose deeds and words looked very mature. She knew Qi Chongqing's identity, so the person he treated with fear and respect was definitely someone with an extraordinary background. "Who exactly are you?" Yang Hui couldn't help but ask. Tang Shou didn't reply, he was even too lazy to speak with her. His actions, however, made the pretty staff member at the side quite surprised. The way she looked at Tang Shou now was different than before. Even the two big men standing next to the elevator door glanced at each other with confused expressions. Schwump. Swish. The elevator door slowly opened and Hao Lei came rushing out. Her eyes swept over from Qi Chongqing and Yang Hui before finally landing on Tang Shou. She paced forward and then respectfully called out, "Why did you come here, boss?" Tang Shou opened his eyes, then stood up and replied, "Well, I was looking for you to deal with something. It just happened that I passed through Hong Kong and was having a stroll, so I came here. But, I had to call you here to get me a work card. I tried to come up but got shut out." Hao Lei abruptly turned around and glared at the pretty lady at the counter before shouting harshly, "He's the big boss of our Grand Fortune Jewelry. Did you just shut him out?" The beauty's pupils contracted while all the fine hairs on her body stood on end. She was both shocked and scared, so she hastily replied, I am sorry. I didn't know that you were our big boss. Don't mind it. I can't blame you since you don't know me and your duty is to stop people who aren't employees." Tang Shou then waved and said, "Hao Lei, you don't need to blame her either. Well, all right then. Let's find a quiet place to talk about some matters. Hao Lei quickly nodded and no longer paid attention to the pretty employee. She walked Tang Xiu into the elevator and then pressed the button for the 33rd floor. As the elevator rose, Tang Xiu asked, "How's the business of Grand Fortune Jewelry recently? Got any troubles?" "Our business is quite good as of late," answered Hao Lei. "But the sales volume has been reduced by 20% compared to the first 2 quarters of last year. It has nothing to do with our funds, gold, or silver, it's mainly because—" "What's the chief reason?" interjected Tang Xiu. "I have yet to figure out the specific cause, but there has been a sudden large-scale acquisition of raw jade by domestic forces. This has led to the scarcity of jade raw materials on the market," explained Hao Lei with a forced smile. "We originally had our own supply channels, but the sudden skyrocket in price recently significantly decreased the number we can purchase, resulting in us having a low stock. Shortly put, the price increase greatly affects the sales volume." Tang Xiu grinned since he naturally knew which force in the country would want to buy jade raw materials in the dark. Yet, he never thought that the price of raw jade would skyrocket due to this reason and even impact his own business. Is it only our Grand Fortune Jewelry's business that got affected? Or, it's not just us. All the major jewelry businesses in the country were impacted, answered Hao Lei quickly. There have been businesspersons in the jade business who are now regretting not stockpiling raw jade materials. Since everyone is affected, it's not because of the internal problems of our Grand Fortune Jewelry, said Tang Xiu with satisfaction. You have this need, so I'll solve it for you. That's right, how much raw jade materials do you need to solve our low stock issue? Hao Lei was stunned. She didn't expect that it would be Big Boss himself offering to help solve the lack of jade. She pondered for a moment and then answered, "We can solve the urgent need of jade raw materials if we can obtain at least 1 ton of it. If it's too much, half a ton should be sufficient, albeit barely. If I give you 5 tons, can you make use of it to earn more profits?" asked Tang Xiu with a smile. "Additionally, when there are enough raw materials, can we buy more of them by making use of the profits we've earned?" Hao Lei was at a loss whether to laugh or cry upon hearing Tang Xiu. She smilingly replied, "Boss, you don't understand the scarcity of jade raw materials, do you? Although the world's major jadeite mines produce a lot of materials each year, the total output is not necessarily more than 5 tons annually. Yet, you actually have a good, that's just great." "Well, don't stare at me like that, boss. If you really can get 5 tons of high-quality jade raw materials, I can guarantee that the price of immediately selling them will be at least enough to buy 2 more tons of jade raw materials. Also, it's only natural that if we process and sell the finished products, we'll even be able to buy at least 5 more tons. You can double it?" Tang Xiu's expression changed and he asked in surprise. "That's right, we can definitely double it," answered Hao Lei with a firm nod. Tang Xiu nodded and followed Hao Lei coming out of the elevator. After he came to her office, he took out an interspatial ring to hand to her and said, "Take this interspatial ring. It's for you, the future reward for the profits you will earn for the company. There are 5 tons of jade inside. Use a drop of your blood to imprint your ownership over the ring. Once you do so, you can take out the jade and take a look at their qualities." Interspatial ring? Hao Lei felt like she was being struck by a lightning bolt as she stood dumbfounded on the spot. Her eyes sparkled with excitement while her hands that cautiously received the interspatial ring were slightly trembling. She then bit her finger and dripped her blood on it. Whoosh! A fist-sized jade appeared in her hand out of thin air and she controlled it to be stowed away again inside the ring. After repeating the test several times, she excitedly said, "Boss, I just observed the inside with my spiritual sense. There is indeed a lot of jade raw materials inside. This is great. With these jade raw materials, our Grand Fortune Jewelry's reputation will definitely go through the roof. It will make it possible for us to obtain more profits in the short term. The quality is really that good," asked Tang Xiu with a smile. They are of excellent quality. Hao Lei firmly nodded and said, they might not be comparable to the best jade raw materials, but they are of top quality nevertheless. I'll immediately contact all the jade carving masters we have to produce the finished goods 24/7. You'll take care of the following works, then, said Tang Xiu. I'll give you 3 months to give me the money from the jade sales and then buy me a batch of jade raw materials. Keep in mind, the current market price is very high, so find a way to limit the price and maximize the profit. No problem, replied Hao Lei with all seriousness. Tang Xiu suddenly recalled something and asked, what's the most valuable item in the VIP area of the 18th floor of our Grand Fortune jewelry? How valuable is it? It's an aqua crystal christened as the heart of the ocean. This aqua crystal is just the size of a baby's fist and it has an aquatic color all over its body. After the most outstanding carving master in Hong Kong spent 16 years to carve it, it has become the treasured object in the advertisements of Grand Fortune jewelry. As for its price, it's 1,888,888,888 yuan. There have been some super rich people in Hong Kong who wanted to buy it but flinched upon facing such a high price before finally getting discouraged. Tang Xiu secretly was a bit surprised. He didn't expect that an aqua crystal would be set at such a high price. After he thought over it, he then said slowly, take me to see it. All right, agreed on Hao Lei and walked Tang Xiu to the VIP area on the 18th floor. After clearing several security doors, the duo arrived at a transparent glass cabinet. This is the aqua crystal? Tang Xiu's eyes were full of wonder after seeing the crystal clear and flawless, the heart of the ocean, inside the tempered glass cabinet. Hao Lei didn't see Tang Xiu's unusual expression since she couldn't take her eyes off of the heart of the ocean. She gently nodded and said, yes. This is the heart of the ocean. Rumors say that it was a British man who fished it out of the ocean. Though I don't know exactly how it was fished out. Boss, you can take it and gift it to your beloved woman if you like it. I'm sure every woman would like it. Gifting it to a woman I love? Tang Xiu almost spurted out a mouthful of blood. He glared at Hao Long but didn't vent his vexed mood at her. Those who have eyes but fail to see empty tie are truly reckless if they were to waste such an incredible precious object. What exactly was this thing? It was a treasure that immortals could only have in their dreams. A very precious object that countless top immortals could only wait and hope for. It could be foretold that tempestuous waves of bloody struggles would happen in the immortal world when this object appeared there. And yet, this precious treasure was actually treated as jewelry here?